Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we're going to talk about heroes who take down little schmucks who think they're going to assault grandfathers. Not today, kids. But speaking of kids, we're also going to talk about how kids are fat. You'll never believe why the media says they are. There's also some problems with assassination attempts and how they're tied to not Biden somehow. White teachers are getting fired because they're white. You don't deserve work. How dare you? Dogs are getting monkeypox. Don't ask why, because that's just gross. And Twitter is rolling out new rules to be the police, not police. Of course, they're always going to police everything and everyone all time. Now, good news is that a major Republican who everyone hates has lost. But unfortunately, a major Republican that everyone loves is still getting, screwed up the tailpipe. And we're going to talk about how a lot of the updates on that story. And then finally, we're going to talk about some Canadian stories and some new revelations on vaccines that you want to hear. So it's going to be a chock-full episode. You're going to want to hear everything we got to talk about today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
Okay. All right, we are back for another Tuesday News Day.
How'd you like that little Robin Williams kind of improvisation, roll with the punches?
Too much.
I thought that was good. They all rolled into each other. I was like, that was good.
It was okay. It was all right.
Oh, come on. You're such a difficult person to please.
I
was pretty proud of it. I was
difficult
like, yeah, speaking of children, we're going to talk about how they're fat.
Yikes.
We're not going to tell you why until we get there.
Anyways. Yep. So, we are back from another weekend of destitution and loneliness.
Destitution.
Yep.
That's right.
And we are going to bring you all the news that you so crave.
we're like drug dealers. We're like, you want more, hey? You want more? It's going to cost you this time. I was like, yeah.
Exactly.
You'll take it.
But before we jump into all of that, Daniel, Senior Sweetness, how was your weekend?
Daniel? How dare you? How dare you use that name? That's
your real name?
I don't like my real name. It's Danny, okay? Danny boy. But anyways, weekend was good. Yeah, had like a big picnic with my church, and then we had what did I do Saturday? Hang out with a total goofball friend of mine. It's actually kind of fun to meet those goofballs. Every so often they bring out the good part of you. And then it's been good so far. What about you, man?
Saturday, Friday was work.
Working machine.
And I kind of got upset at work on Friday because my son did his unfortunately typical running away routine. And he did it while I was at work. And so Steph calls me. She's like, "Are you coming home?" And I'm like, "No, I'm stuck here." And she's like, "Well, Curtis ran away." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know when I'm going to come home." So,
oh boy.
He came back within 15 minutes, but still it was
yeah.
So then
it's hankering for some spankering.
Exactly. Then we had Anna and Russell come over. We watched What Is a Woman again.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun. And we were trying to get Thomas to stay, but he could not. Or at least he didn't want to stay. And I'm like, "But you have to subscribe if you want to watch the movie." And he's like, "I'll find a way to watch it." And I'm like, Good luck. And then on Saturday, we went with Stephanie's parents and with the brother-in-law and his family to Callaway Park.
That's exciting. That's a good place to go.
I think the kids are still a little too young to properly experience Callaway Park.
There's a lot of big rides on there.
Yeah, so there was only one of the grandchildren that could go on the rides, and we're like, well, now we basically can't go on those rides because those rides always have the longest lines. and because all the other kids can't go. And that oldest cousin was like terrified of the boat.
Isn't that water ride?
No. Like the boat the boat that rocks.
Oh, that
it's called Ocean Motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was not having it on that ride. And we're like, you are not going to go on the roller coaster if you're not having it on the Ocean Motion.
Nope. That roller coaster is a decent roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, yep, when the kids, when they're older, will go on the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
Till then, they enjoyed most of the rides they went on. Mm-hmm. But dang, that's expensive.
Yeah, it is not cheap to go to Callaway Park.
It was $490.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
what is it, $40 per person?
$50
per person.
$50 per person, and then 40 for seniors.
Yeah, but it's I mean, the only nice thing about it is that once you get in, all the rides are basically free.
Yes.
Which is, to be fair, it's cheaper than Stampede.
Yes, if you go on some of those really expensive rides. I did go on a $40 ride once at Stampede.
Yep.
It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dang, you were so fast. And it was terrifying at the top.
You're like Rocket Man.
Well, because I went with Josh Sissons. No, did I go with Javen or Josh? I don't remember. They're twins. One of the Sissons twins. And we're like sitting up at the top, and you don't know when you're gonna you know that when you fall, you're just gonna go whoosh.
It's gonna be horrible, yeah.
And so you're just like, this is terrifying up here. Like, I'm as high as a skyscraper, and I do not know when I'm gonna plummet to the ground, and I know that I'm gonna go like, I think they said that the speeds you got up to were like 120 miles an hour. It was just like, zoom. It's like. They're like, just don't have anything on your person because it's going to fall. And I'm like, no kidding.
Well,
so,
Steven,
yeah,
speaking of thrilling,
yeah,
there's a thrilling hero adventure that happened.
Thrilling heroics.
Thrilling heroics.
Yeah, let's check
By the way, this is Steven's first
so live reaction.
He's never seen this before.
Yeah, he decided that's what he's going to do. He just fucking clocked him. What the fuck? And then he takes his fucking wallet. I'm like, what the fuck? Hell no.
Headlock time, baby.
Yeah, and this is glasses, they're destroyed.
There goes the wifey.
And my money is coming out of my pocket. See? Fuck all the fucking money.
Still, he's like, I'm gonna reach for my money while holding this guy down.
Yeah, all this money's going.
Did his face get busted when he was on the ground?
Bro, yeah, I think the tackle, because when he hit me.
Yeah. She's like, no.
That kid, like, the funny thing is, that kid walks into that restaurant directly to the old man, punches him out, and then thinks like, oh, I'm good. And it doesn't even try to run. Like, that after he hits him,
he just walks away.
Well, no, he grabs his wallet and walks away, and then he sees guy.
The other guy running after him, and then he runs away.
But the second he sees this guy coming after him, then he doesn't even try to run. He tries to like engage.
Yeah.
And then immediately after the guy engages, like he basically gets walloped to the ground, and he is done after that. It was so good.
Yeah. Good for
this. This is
guy.
what you want to see. This is what you want to see from bystanders, not people watching, be like in horror and not knowing what to do. Like people actually be like, nope, not on my watch, bro. Not on my watch.
Mm-hmm.
That was so good.
Yep. So, going from something that is so good to something that is so stupid.
Yep.
Study claims more kids are fat and unhealthy because of global warming.
Oh, of course they are.
Not because they're fed crap, but encouraged to vegetate in front of iPads and TVs.
I can't possibly.
A study published in the journal Temperature has claimed there is a correlation between rising temperatures and children becoming fatter. The study claims that climate change is causing more children to stay inside, eat more, and be generally less active. CBS Mornings covered the findings this past weekend, noting that almost a third of kids are less fit than they were a generation ago. It also notes that fewer children are engaging in physical activity for 60 minutes a day. The core argument of the study concerns heat stress assessment and claims that it would be more dangerous and less fun to children to be active. It's warmer outside. Nonsense.
Funny how that doesn't ever happen or correlate when you look when the temperature goes down, kids still don't go outside.
Yeah. So
and hotter climates, kids still go outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Critics have noted that the study uses stats recorded during COVID lockdowns, and as such, it may be skewed. It notes maybe skewed.
Yeah, my goodness.
It notes climate change will not only exert different direct effects like higher ambient temperatures in many regions, but also be responsible for indirect effects that can independently affect child physical activity habits, for example, as observed during the COVID-19 global pandemic. Perhaps the fact that children are becoming obese and unhealthy has more to do with the fact that their parents increasingly feed them unhealthy food, coupled with the fact that society encourages, protects, and even celebrates unhealthy lifestyles.
That can't possibly be it.
Yep. And such is highlighted in this quick video from CBS Mornings. I love how they already have like a fact check on it. This is climate change. So
you have to know.
Yep.
Thank goodness the fact checkers are all
specifically higher temperatures is making our children more inactive and more obese. The study published in journal Temperature found today's children are 30% less aerobically fit than their parents were at their age. Fewer children are reaching the World Health Organization's recommendation of 60 minutes of exercise a day. Now, listen, it has been a lot hotter, and the weather has been crazy. But I think it also has to do with technology.
Yeah.
It's one thing not to go outside, but these kids don't go outside because they can stay inside and be on their phones, play video games, and be social without having to go outside and be social.
Yeah.
And that, kids, is called a non sequitur.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, kids are less active. They're not getting the regular exercise. Therefore, climate change is responsible. I'm like, that's not how you get there. Not at all.
Yeah, especially considering that when you look at the statistics for childhood obesity, that the hotter states, the ones that are hotter on average, are not universally fatter. Florida is actually one of the leanest states in the entire country.
But then again, Texas is one of the fattest.
Yeah, Texas is one of the fattest.
They're both hot.
Yeah, they're both hot. So, don't think temperature is a huge factor in this.
Not to mention look at countries like Mexico or African countries on the equator. I'm like, nah, kids are still not fat there.
They're not so fat. Yep. Kind of happens when you get raised on a diet of millet and rice.
Yeah, this is what happens when you make a single factor analysis. When it's like, there's only one possible reason for it that explains everything, right? It's kind of like the pay gap nonsense, right? The hoax about the pay gap. It's like, well, we got the total annual income of men and total annual income of women, and there's a bit of a disparity. Hence, sexism is responsible. One little explanation explains every complexity, every variable. I think people need to learn what a variable is and how many there are.
Yep.
In any complex system.
Well, and I think, of course, not to say it's dialed down to one variable, but unhealthy food, like they were saying, which is, in a lot of cases, it's cheaper, it's easier to acquire, it's less effort for the parents. My family, we typically have one night a week where I'll grab McDonald's on the way home. And that'll be the kids' treat day in the week.
Yep.
But aside from that, it's no, we're going to focus on trying to have reasonably healthy meals and limit the amount of TV time. But what some families are doing is it's nonsensical for health. If you have your children and they are watching 4 or 5 hours of TV a day, and you just ply them with snacks, and you don't give them any real food of substance, then of course they're going to become fatter than you were at their age. You didn't have Disney Plus and Netflix when you were a kid. You didn't have an Xbox. Well, when I was a kid, we were just getting Xbox. When I was in like my early teens.
You're spoiled brats when you were.
I know.
Xbox teens.
When I was a kid, when I was a small child, we had an N64 that we saved up enough money to buy at a pawn shop. And that was what we had as a child.
Like when I was a young warrior,
I
got an Xbox. But yeah, like it's I think this is an example of confirmation bias where like people who already believe climate change is like, the big existential crisis, they see a study like this and they're like, oh, that's got to be true because it confirms all my biases. That has to be true. And I mean, let's face it, this happens with both the left and the right to certain degrees. I mean, you see you see something that confirms your views and your beliefs. You almost want to instantly be like, yeah, that's got to be true. That sounds reasonable. But I find that most of the time, the people who are reasonable and willing to kind of actually look at the facts are people on the right, not on the left. So you get like a lefty looks at that study, be like, aha, proof that climate change is bad and it's causing kids to be fat. That's why we have to stop the world.
Yeah, we have to isolate the world.
We have to isolate the world. And get the paper straws out there, because that's also
paper straws out.
Yeah, guess that's saving everything. It's really the best.
Yep. There was, I think for a brief period of time, 7-Eleven had like Slurpee paper straws, and everybody was just like, no, don't do this.
No, you stick to what you do, cheap food, convenience.
Yep.
You're supposed to be a convenience store, my darn.
Mm-hmm.
But, let's talk about the next story, which is Salman Rushdie. Who the heck is he, Stephen?
So, Salman Rushdie, severely injured in stabbing at lecture in New York. Suspect in custody. Salman Rushdie, the author whose writing led to death threats from Iran in the 1980s, was stabbed Friday as he was about to give a lecture in Western New York. The 75-year-old author was stabbed at least once in the neck and once in the abdomen, officials said during a Friday evening press conference. His agent later said he has been placed on a ventilator and will likely lose an eye. Hadi Matar of Fairview, New Jersey, was identified as the suspect. Major Eugene J. Staniszewski of the New York State Police told reporter. He had a pass to access the grounds, just like the others who were in the audience, officials said. Matar was taken into custody by a state trooper assigned to the event. Authorities believe he acted alone and are working to determine a motive. Really?
What possible motive could this person have had to attack a Muslim critical like a scholar?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought? What possible motive?
Yeah, so they don't even
barely motives only exist on the right.
They don't mention anything about his. Well, okay, here finally. So Rushdie's book, The Satanic Verses, have been banned in Iran since 1988, and many Muslims consider it to be blasphemous. A year later, Iran's late leader Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei issued a fatwa or edict calling for Rushdie's death. Iran's government has long since distanced itself from Khamenei's decree, but anti-Rushdie sentiment lingered. In 2012, semi-official Iranian Religious Foundation raised the bounty for Rushdie from $2.8 million to $3.3 million. Rushdie dismissed the threat at that time, saying there was no evidence of people being interested in the reward. That year, he published a memoir, Joseph Anton, about his experience living under the fatwa.
I think it's always hilarious when you see these kind of stories. There's whenever you say anything remotely critical of anything Islamic, any attack, whatever, people are always super quick to say like, well, it's no different in Christianity, and I'm like, Stephen, does Christianity have fatwas? Like,
nope.
Actual full on like, hey, here's
someone who we're gonna call for the death of.
Yeah, actual death, calls, like public death calls to kill somebody and publicly assassinate someone.
Christians are even, you think back to the time of Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer struggled to find the justification to kill Hitler himself. Mm-hmm. And it's and then you compare to Islam, and Islam just commands the death of anyone who becomes an apostate.
Yeah, apostate. Yeah.
Anyone. Well, and like
you and I know people. We've been at groups where we've met people that had to change their names, had to go take some very, very, very remarkable safety precautions because the threat of somebody coming after them was a very real threat, and that does not happen in Christianity. Not get parent. People always complain like, oh, Christians kicked that poor little that poor kid who came out as gay or something like that, and okay, there's a case to be made for that. But I mean, we didn't send out a hit.
Yeah.
To have
we
them
didn't
murdered.
Stone them, such as the instruction of Islam.
Yeah.
If you come out as gay.
Yeah, if you come out as gay to a Muslim family, they very likely will probably seek your death.
Yep.
Because and I mean, North America maybe not as much.
Well,
but
in Afghanistan, you get thrown from a building.
Easy. Oh, in Saudi Arabia and in Syria, in Gaza, they will literally toss you off and all that. So
and they're not just doing this sort of stuff to gays; they're also doing it to women and other minorities. So, this is all describing the horrors of living under a radical Muslim government. Afghanistan. What's changed a year after the Taliban's return? So, 1 year ago, the Taliban slept through the Afghan capital of Kabul as foreign forces hastily completed their withdrawal. Speaking for the Taliban, at the time, Zabihullah Mujahid made a number of pledges for the new government. As the regime lived up to its promises, we're going to allow women to work and study. Women are going to be very active, but within the framework of Islam. The previous Taliban regime severely curtailed women's freedoms, and such the takeover of Taliban by the Taliban last year, a series of restrictions have been reimposed on women. Regulations on clothing and laws forbidding access to public areas without a male government guardian have been enforced. In March, schools reopened for a new academic year, but the Taliban reversed an earlier promise, and girls are not permitted to attend secondary school.
Wait, are you saying that world-renowned terrorists don't keep their word? Color me shocked.
Yeah. So, Taliban has been blamed for a lack of female teachers and the need to arrange the segregation of facilities. This has, of course, affected an estimated 1.1 million pupils. Primary school education for girls has been permitted.
Very limited, I'm guessing.
So, some public universities reopened for both men and women in February, but women's participation in the labor force has dropped since the Taliban takeover, according to the World Bank. It went from 15% to 22% in just over a decade between 1998 and 2019, and now it's back to 15%.
Uh-huh. You know what's really funny about this BBC article? Is that they keep criticizing Afghanistan as if Afghanistanis or people who live there and most of the population give a rip what the West thinks about their policies or their ways of living or something like that. I'm like, yeah, good luck.
Well, what was it? They call America the big Satan.
Yep.
And call Israel the little Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And then Europe is kind of like the tiny Satan. The middle Satan.
Well, and I think it was Ami Horowitz. He did a interview with people in the States. These are people who are liberals living in liberal strongholds like Portland, Seattle, wherever it was. And he basically said who do you support in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? And they're like, oh, of course, Palestine. Israel's bad. And it's oh, which one of them do you think that is more supportive of gay people? It's oh, Palestinians and all that. Then he shows him video of interviews he had with Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and different places. And he asked them straight up questions about what they think about gay people. And their answers were so horrifying.
Yep.
You could see the people's faces, and they're like, oh, they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Who are these people? It's yeah, this is not on you. This is what you see everywhere you go. You interview 20 people on the street in Jordan and the West Bank and Egypt. They'll all say the same thing. They basically say that gay people are basically a disease and a curse to like the West, and they have to be eradicated from society. I'm like, yeah, these are just regular people who walked up to on the street.
Yep.
Very mainstream.
Very mainstream to just be like,
so,
time to die.
Yeah. and this is the thing, like BBC, this is the West, like their virtue signaling, like, what about girls? What about like equality? And like, they don't give a rip about equality.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that we have this sense of like entitlement in the West. Thinking like our values are so amazing.
Universal. Well, it's like, it's not just, well, like American Western values are, of course, generically superior to values of the Middle East and generally Asia. But they're not perfect. And of course, they're definitely not universally accepted.
No.
And so trying to use the lens of Western human rights and the foundation and framework of human rights from the West to judge and to apply that to other areas, especially looking at the Middle East, because the Middle East is such a frank and oppositional image in comparison to the West.
Well, those areas have, so the West has a Judeo-Christian framework.
Yes.
That's their basis for...
That has been, of course, corrupted, but still.
But
basic framework is Judeo-Christian values.
Foundation. But in Islamic countries, is an Islamic framework.
Yeah, Sharia.
Which most people don't understand what that is and how that works and what it actually entails. But they're not compatible. And this is why you have like those problems in many Western countries that have brought in like a ton of like Muslim immigrants. They have those no-go zones, which are basically Muslim districts.
Yeah,
that operate with less Sharia law. So yeah, it's crazy. But speaking of like corrupted Western values, Stephen, in Minnesota
from the New York Post. White teachers would be laid off first under Minnesota teachers' contract. So Minneapolis public school teachers of color will have additional job protections in this upcoming school year under a new contract that would allow them to keep their jobs rather than white instructors with more seniority. The labor agreement's intent was to protect underrepresented populations and to keep the district's predominantly white staff from becoming more homogenous.
But it's not racist.
Yeah, that's not racist at all. About 60% of Minneapolis students are non-white compared to 16% of the district's tenured teachers and about 27% of its probationary teachers. The agreement states that teachers of color may be exempted from the district-wide layoffs outside seniority order. According to Minnesota outlet Alpha News, which published language from the contract Sunday. Starting with the spring 2023 budget, it's if accessing reducing a teacher who is a member of a population underrepresented among Langston teachers in the site, the district shall access the next least senior teacher who is not a member of an underrepresented population.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a CRT at its finest.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like, for anyone who out there who has any common sense, you know that this is incredibly, like, racist. It's prejudiced.
Mm-hmm.
You're firing someone entirely because of their skin color, which is an immutable trait. Like a white teacher cannot magically change their skin color, but you're not actually considering the myriad of factors that could influence like who is worthy of staying or not. This is the problem with CRT, is that again they simplify and they whittle everything down to, and they say that the only factor that's important is the race of the teacher, not anything else. I mean, you don't know, like are you the best teachers? Are you going to fire a white teacher that is a massive detriment to the school? Like, are they like an actual jerk? Yeah. Or are they maybe like the best teacher in the school? Every kid loves them and does so much volunteer work and so much amazing stuff for her students. And the students, she basically makes the entire school better. But like, we're going to fire you because you're white. Yeah. And they'll leave all the, like, the teachers that don't give a crap, and teachers that like, create division and are angry at the students. I used to work in schools. You know who the teachers are, who actually care. Benefit. Yeah, who care and who are a benefit to the students.
Yeah,
And you know the teachers that have checked out and couldn't care less about the kids.
Oh, yeah, big time. Well, of course, the agreement said that past discrimination had made the district's teaching staff underrepresented to the community and resulted in a lack of diversity of teachers. So the teachers union and the school district mutually agreed on the deal. A representative from the Upper Midwest Law Center told Alpha News the agreement was unconstitutional. Well, that's obvious.
Of course it is.
But of course, what they're searching for here, what they have gotten to, it's like, well, we have an issue with past discrimination. And how we're going to solve that?
Future discrimination.
Present discrimination. Future discrimination. Because that's apparently, according to critical theory, that is how you solve discrimination in the past that no one currently is experiencing, is that you have to apply it to today so that it tries to claim to equal it out.
Yeah, it's the new math, Stephen. Basically, in the past, two wrongs didn't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. But apparently, two wrongs definitely make a right now.
Do now.
Yeah, you solve injustice with fresh injustice. That's how it works. And you think I'm kidding, but that's actually...
Oh, that's how they totally talk about it.
That is exactly what CRT scholars will say. They say, well, we have to remedy all of these inequalities, inequities, and all these imaginary boogeymen that don't exist. You can't find them. Don't ask them to point them out. But they're there, and they're hidden. They're out in the ether somewhere. But they basically say that, well, we can't solve inequalities and all these magical boogeymen of problems without through normal means. We have to engage in our own fruity and colorful and flowery forms of injustice. So at its core, CRT is one of the most destructive and poison. It's basically cancer for society. All it knows how to do is destroy. It doesn't know how to create or build.
Yep.
That's pretty much what it works. So
yeah, critical theory is it attacks the very framework of civilization.
Yeah.
And
speaking of this critical theory, let's talk about gender theory, Stephen.
Indeed. So we've mentioned this, of course, for the past few weeks, but now just to kind of drive it home, phalloplasty ruined my life, biological female, or just female, because I'm one of those people that does not like using the biological female term because it distinguishes when it's really just nope.
This girl.
You are a woman and you were delusional.
Hear me roar.
Yep. So female reveals horrifying complications of gender-affirming surgery. Every day for me personally, I'm reminded of the trauma through phalloplasty because I look at my arm every day and I see this. Popular social media account Libs of TikTok shared a viral video on the Monday of a trans-identified person who spoke about the complications experienced due to genital surgery in a 3-part series called Phalloplasty Ruined My Life. So, this person, who goes by Crispy, CrySpy, shared a series of videos to the account's 12.3 thousand followers in March, warning them not to get phalloplasty, which left CrySpy traumatized.
It's called Crispy. Come on, man.
Well, it could be.
No, it's pretty obviously crispy.
I know. Well, here it says it's Cripsy.
No, it's crispy.
Well, look at this. Crispy, and then here it's with a Y twice. It's spelled differently in this 2 times, and then here it has the S before the P.
Weird. I don't know. Maybe you have to listen to them talk.
Maybe okay. Let's watch the video and see if they have.
I started phalloplasty back in March 2020, and we are in March 2022.
Does look like Crispy,
and we're not even halfway through the process. To put it lightly, the past year has been them trying to fix their F up. I have a fistula, which is an abnormal connection between my urethra and my rectum, meaning the P-tube is pretty much going through my rectum, which is causing ongoing UTIs, urinary tract infections.
No kidding.
And so when I had surgery back in July is when they tried to first fix the fistula from going from above. And so that gave me an ostomy bag at age 27. At age 27, I am pooping in a bag. Right. And this past week and a half ago, Went back in for another surgery to try to fix the same issue, but this time going through the rectum. And so now after that, I had 2 catheters put in, a Foley and an SP. And the Foley catheter is out. The SP we're still rocking with, sadly, to this day. But my warning is that as much as we want to make our transition is about the physicality and making sure that we look the part, there's so much more than to being a man or a woman than how we appear. And I wish I knew that.
Jeez.
Still completely bought into it.
Yep. But
like
this is the thing, though. Hey, Stephen, like it's, like, if you want to even ask the slightest question about what this entails, they're like, whoa, sure, whoa, shush. You can't, like, demonize. You can't even, like, raise questions and all that kind of stuff. They don't want to let you know the potential risks and the potential complications that could happen. Like, that guy on the, what was it, the What is a Woman documentary, he basically talked about, like, what a nightmare these surgeries are. Like good luck getting through these with one or 2 surgeries. You're looking at, like, several, if not like up to like a dozen.
Well, this person had 12 in the past 2 years.
Yes,
and that's more. That's just from the complications.
Yeah, but the complications are not rare.
No,
they're very common, and it's just basically I like to call them like Frankenstein surgeries. Because if you know anything about, like, the Dr. Frankenstein and what he did, he basically assembled, like, a bunch of assorted body parts and put them together, tried to, like, infuse them with life and all that. And that's basically what they're doing to this poor person. Because, like, what they did is they took, like, flesh from their forearm, and they basically glued it, or basically surgically attached it to his body to make it look like it's, like, a real like, penis and all that, but it's not. And it's just, they're basically making, like, mutilating people, turning them into Frankenstein.
Well, and,
giving them
like,
Frankenstein body
you
parts.
look at this person's experience. So Crispy reveals that it was only after being raped by a man that the female anatomy Crispy was born with caused distress. It was then that Crispy sought medical transition. Long story short, it was a very traumatic experience for me, to the point where from that night on, the genitalia bothered me to the point where every time I would shower, I would break down. Just think about the fact that I had that down there would give me anxiety. The fact that this individual was having these issues, and the medical organizations that claim to help them, that claim to work with them, instead of giving them therapy and counseling to overcome their PTSD from being raped, they're like, oh, well, transitioning will solve your problems. Let's add physical trauma to your mental and emotional trauma. These people are money-grubbing bastards.
No, they're worse than that. They're monsters.
Well, oh yeah, like there are a plethora, as Nenshi once said, I have nouns that I would use, but I'm not supposed to.
The problem is that most of these kids are being completely and totally lied to, and they do it without their parents present. Like, I remember like one of my best friends growing up. She basically told me that her parents sat her and her siblings down when they were teenagers, and they gave them some very good advice. They basically, by the way, if at any point in your life you basically are desperate and you need a ride home, call us and we will come pick you up and drive you home, no questions asked, because they didn't want to like make the stigma of like, we'll pick you up and yell at you. Be like, no, it's more important you get home safe, and then we'll deal with whatever happened. But the big advice they gave them is like, if you're ever brought in by police officers and they want to like ask you questions, you never, under any circumstances, for any reason, ever open your mouth.
Yeah.
You do not talk to police officers without us present, or without or without our lawyer. And don't even listen to them offering you a lawyer themselves. Like, no. You wait for us. You do not open your mouth. Because they understand that it's very easy for even police officers to take advantage of the naivety of teenagers or even like young adults. And that's a rule that works for like regular people. This is a rule that is being completely tossed aside, being like, you know what, we're going to remove your parents from the equation, and we, the people in charge, the people who know better, we're going to try to convince a very impressionable, a very trusting, and a very, unfortunately, uninformed and unprepared child to make massive life-changing decisions in a way that they can possibly fathom the consequences. This is what they're doing, and this is where a lot of this crap leads. And these poor kids basically are basically put on a permanent road to destroying themselves, their bodies, psychology, and then at the end of the whole thing, when they commit suicide, and then the left basically says like, "Oh, you see, more stats that we can use to justify our carnage." That's what they're like, like, oh, good. It's better for them if people die because then you can keep those stats going, and then you can use those stats to justify throwing more kids into the meat grinder.
Yep.
I feel terrible for this person. This person has pretty much ruined their life. And it's sad, actually. You know the crazy thing though is in the past, like you usually watch like TV shows, like I used to watch How I Met Your Mother, and they have episodes where like what's the worst thing that could happen? It's like Ted marrying Robin. It's like, I used to be a dude, and now it used to be a joke.
Yeah,
you're like, no, that kind of stuff doesn't happen, but it's funny if that was the case and all that. But nowadays, you look at this person, and they actually look like a very convincing guy.
Yep.
That's how like really, really crazy our society's going. But yeah.
Speaking of the craziness of our society,
there you go.
Dog tests positive for monkeypox, spurring CDC to update its guidance.
Well, that's the only thing that we.
So the CDC has updated its monkeypox guidance to reflect that dogs are susceptible to contracting the virus after a study reported it's the first known case of a human-to-dog transmission in France.
I wonder how that happened.
A 4-year-old Italian greyhound contracted the virus 12 days after the 2 men it lived with in Paris began exhibiting symptoms, according to a study published in The Lancet. To the best of our knowledge, the kinetics of symptom onset in both patients and subsequently in their dogs suggest human-to-dog transmission of a monkeypox virus. Infections among domesticated animals, such as dogs and cats, had not previously been reported. Researchers were able to trace the infection through DNA analysis from one of the men to one of the dog. The 2 males owners of the greyhound reported they have slept with their dog while symptomatic, but had not allowed the dog to have contacts with other pets or humans. The dog's symptoms of the virus included lesions on the skin and ulceration. Yep. Lovely.
This reminds me a lot of that story of that. What was it? Those 2 kids that got monkeypox, and that's where the question ended. We don't need to know anything else. It's fine. Nothing here.
Well, and of course, like from what we know of monkeypox transmission, I think they did a little more than just sleeping with their dog.
It's an STD for a reason.
Yeah.
I love it. Like they just stop any investigation or any additional questions. Like, so how did the dog get it? It's like, oh, look at that. Is that a reason?
Oh, how did you get it? Oh, gay orgy? Don't say.
Go figure.
Go figure. And there's very, very few organizations which are willing to admit that. Even Fox News is like, no, that's bigoted. You can't say that.
Yeah, that was actually a crazy video that we saw.
That was so disappointing.
So
that everybody but that one guy was, oh, that's so bigoted. That's so irresponsible and negligent to say. And he's like, nope. If you want to avoid monkeypox, don't go to gay orgies. That's how you protect yourself from monkeypox. Piece of cake.
Yes, this is why we need free speech.
Yep.
Because when you don't have free speech, you get things like that. Like, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to talk about that. I swear. All of these things thrive like crazy. They're like viruses. You're not allowed to, go after the virus because, that'd be mean or something.
Well, and of course, like when you try and ban, when you try and censor information that goes against your narrative, then you create a system in which only one agenda and one narrative is promoted. And unfortunately, this is what big tech and these other organizations are trying to promote, such as what Twitter is trying to do ahead of the midterms. So they roll out election misinformation rules ahead of U.S. midterms. They reintroduced its rules governing election misinformation as the social media site prepares for this year's midterms, the company said Thursday. The San Fran-based tech giant said it will apply its civic integrity policy to the November 8th midterm elections, which all 435 seats of the United States House of Representatives, as well as a third of the Senate, will be up for grabs. The stated goal of the policy, which was first introduced in 2018, is to elevate credible information and help keep you safe on Twitter. Sure.
Yeah. Help keep us safe from... Can you help keep us safe from you? Any way you can do that?
Yeah. So the mission of our civic integrity work is to protect the conversation on Twitter during elections or the civic processes. Twitter will offer users pre-bunks or prompts on the home screen that help guide people to accurate information. It will also apply labels to tweets that it deems to be misleading. So social media sites, including... Yes, go ahead.
Have you gotten that on Facebook? Like, before, like you press like share on something. Be like,
yes,
be sure you're sharing reliable information.
Well, yeah, and it's and of course everybody's seen those things. It's like, this post contains this. Are you sure?
Yeah.
It's like,
or my favorite. It's like, you're sharing something without reading it. Are you sure you? I'm like, this is from a trusted news source. I'm sharing it. Go away. It's like, it feels like you have like the nanny state, like trying to talk to you like you're a 5-year-old.
Yep. Compliance.
Compliance.
For those who don't get that reference, we were watching these music videos by a band called Muse, which Michael Knowles reviewed one of their songs called Compliance yesterday. And there's one of their songs in which they say, "We need your compliance." It's like,
very catchy song.
Very catchy song. Very 80s like retro synth vibes, but still pretty cool.
Job.
They did a great job. And make sure if you're going to it, if you're checking it out, check out their official music video on YouTube, because it makes a lot more sense than just listening to the song by itself.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, these information that Twitter is censoring, the information that Twitter is promoting, we all know what happened in the 2020 election, especially with Hunter Biden. Twitter banned any information about Hunter Biden's laptop, even though it was totally legitimate. Mm-hmm. And that could have changed the outcome of the election just by that information alone.
Yeah. I think one thing that really makes things difficult now is that people just, these organizations or news sites or whatever, they give them the benefit of the doubt way too easily. Particularly like a lot of these like brain dead lefties, because they just assume like, well, it's on the trusted news site that I trust, so it has to be true. And like they're just not even willing to do the hard work and actually maybe check if they're right or wrong. But that's the problem. Twitter keeps acting like they're the arbiters of truth, and like they have the most horrible reputation.
Yeah.
They need to earn it. They need to earn the right to be to do that, but they act like they have all the integrity of the world. Mm-hmm. And sadly, the problem is that we know how this is going to. They're going to censor reliable information. They're going to censor who even hints at the idea that this election wasn't legit, that it wasn't up to the bar. Any criticism of any of the processes. Here's one thing I'm going to say. I remember, I don't know who it was last week, but Timcast IRL, they had a guest, and they talked about whether, this might have actually been last night, but they had a guest, and they talked about how whether the 2020 election was legit or whether it wasn't legit. I don't think the guy made a good case, but I think here's the case. In 2020, in 2016, they were not ready. They thought Hillary was a shoo-in. They didn't know that Trump was going to be the final nominee. They didn't have time to prepare. 2020, they had time to prepare. And they wanted, and they would do anything. They would cheat. They would kill their own grandmother in order to get what they want. And a lot of people are talking about the wave coming the November elections. But here's the thing that you have to be careful of. Do you think that the same people who went to such massive lengths to try to do everything they could to undermine the election in 2020, do you think they're not going to do the same thing in the election? No, we're going to see it. And so, but here's the thing. When they tell you that, oh, how dare you question the election, there's a video that somebody made that basically shows that if there's anybody who is horrible at questioning election results, not the right.
Democrats.
So,
yeah. I'm just going to play like 30 seconds of this.
Campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
12 minutes of Democrats denying election results.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's the real
what I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president or elected, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe.
Yeah.
Yep. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, so
and of course, like you look at the differences between in 2016, they're like, well, the Russians, and so the Republicans and Trump are like, okay, go for it. Like, conduct all the investigations you want, look at whatever you want to. And of course, the FBI composed the Steele dossier, which was completely fabricated. They composed the Mueller report, which found nothing, and so it was completely proven, because of a thorough and proper investigation, that nothing happened.
A bunch of baloney.
Yeah, and then you look at 2020, which, because we post some of our videos onto YouTube, it was the most wondrous and free election of all time. It was the most perfect. Yay, yay, yay.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. We know lots of things happened. Yeah. We know that there were significant problems. And a lot of those problems were linked to certain counties.
Yeah.
And certain counties had many issues with counting, with collections, with certifying ballots that probably shouldn't have been certified.
And the problems were everywhere. They were not one place.
They were all over.
I mean, they call us conspiracy theorists, but like their conspiracies are even more elaborate. And more nonsensical and more like...
Yeah, and of course, like, YouTube removed our last account because we just, like, kind of brought up the fact that things weren't fair. But these things are still allowed on YouTube. These kind of posts saying that Trump in 2016 was an illegitimate president... Posts saying that the Russians won the election for him. Nope, that's totally fair on YouTube. Because they have an agenda, they have a narrative, and everything must align with it.
Yeah, Stephen, am I allowed to say that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president?
Not on YouTube. Not on Twitter.
Oh.
You would get a fact check warning.
I mean, I can't share an opinion.
Yeah.
Even though that there's like way more potential reason to believe that that's actually the case, but I'm like, whatever. But it's only okay when they. I recommend you watch the video. They go through like 2016 election. They go through the 2000 election with George Bush and Al Gore. They go through the 2004 election with Mr. George W. Bush.
Yep.
And that election. They go through the. There was another one. Oh yeah, the Stacey Abrams, election. They just went all over the place. It is crazy, man. They've done it forever. Now I don't think they're gonna stop.
Yep.
Right, Steve?
Indeed. But thankfully, with elections, there is some good news.
They got their comeuppance.
So last week we covered, or was that 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago. No, it was just like a random commentary about Dick Cheney saying about how that Trump was the greatest threat to the American democracy in its entire inception, and how he supported his daughter because his daughter was brave and bold and courageous and wonderful. And thankfully, good heavens, she's lost. She is a horrible human being, a horrible person, and she lost bigly. This is current numbers from 69% of the votes. Harriet Hagman, 75,000 votes. Liz Cheney, 37,000. Yeah, so Liz Cheney has half of the votes of Harriet Hagman. Thank goodness. Get out of there, Liz Cheney. You suck.
Liz Cheney is done.
Thankfully, she is done. I was watching a video from Fox News earlier about them interviewing people from Wyoming, and they're like, nope, we're glad she's gone.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah. They're super happy to get rid
There was
of
only
her.
one person who was like, oh yes, like she's a wonderful person. If she ran for president, I would totally vote for her. It's like, yep.
You watch CNN, don't you? It's like, I
You
sure do.
are not in line with majority of Republicans, so bye-bye.
Well, the funny thing is, like, Wyoming is one of the most heavily Trump supporting states, and you have the biggest sellout, the biggest Trump sellout ever. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? Wait, I'm shocked. Why are my people not supporting me? God.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, little side story. Lisa Murkowski, who is the representative for, I think it was Alaska.
Yeah.
Apparently, she doesn't have to go through the same thing as Liz Cheney did, because apparently Alaska does not have a direct primary. They have like a ranked ballot or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, apparently she's safe. But they said a lot of people said that if she had to go through a primary thing, Alaska, she probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
Because these people are just complete They're rhinos.
Yep, they are rhinos. They are complete rhinos.
That's the nose. I'm telling you.
Yep. But Trump is not a rhino.
No.
But, and so we've been talking about this FBI raid for the past week or so, since it happened last Monday. But from Trump, the FBI grabbed everything like I was a common criminal. The DOJ has returned former President Donald Trump's passports, but only after they grabbed everything while raiding his Mar-a-Lago home.
Wait, I thought they didn't have his passport.
Well, that's what they claimed.
Oh.
So
what?
Trump said, be like, well, they took my passports, and they're like, that's misleading and false information. We returned his passports.
Which we didn't have. Somehow.
Yeah. So the DOJ and FBI just returned my passports, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Thank you. Unfortunately, when they raided my home 8 days ago, they opened their arms and grabbed everything in sight, much as a common criminal would do. This shouldn't happen in America. He first raised the issues of his passports being stolen from his home Monday night. And NBC News' Norah O'Donnell tweeted a claim to the contrary, which would ultimately prove misleading. New, according to a DOJ official, the FBI is not in possession of former Trump's passports, she tweeted. Trump had accused the FBI of stealing his 3 passports during the search of his Mar-a-Lago home. After the tweet, Republicans, a defender of the former president, noted her tweet, not in possession, missed the real news story, that they did indeed seize the Trump passports, as he claimed. This is how fake news works, folks. From Taylor Budowich, Trump Save America, PAC. So,
essentially, a lot of people were speculating that that them taking his passports was a sign that the criminal.
They were going to put him on. Criminal charges and indictments. It wouldn't surprise me too much if they tried this, just because they know that they have to try and make something stick for him to be barred from running.
Yes, but the problem is that them giving his passports back, it actually weakens that idea. Because let's face it, Trump doesn't actually need a passport to fly. Like, it's not actually that hard. I mean, for a regular citizen, yes, you have to go through the airport security, you have to go through all the things that are, you can't just kind of fly anywhere you want. But Trump has his own jet. He can go if he wants to. He can leave whenever he wants. That's not hard. But the fact that they give him back shows that he's probably not going to get charged. But here's the 2 most prominent theories, Stephen. And I want to hear what you think. The two most prominent theories I've heard of like why they went in. Number one is fishing expedition. Let's just go in, try to find all the stuff we can, and see what we can grab or something like that.
Yep.
Number two, second option, is that they went in because Trump apparently had some blackmail documents that they wanted to basically ensure that he couldn't release them, like he maybe wanted in the future or something. That's the other possibility. Cover their own butts, or try to maybe, fish for possible criminal investigation.
I would say they were fishing, and then not just fishing for a possible criminal investigation, but they were hoping that there would be some sort of extra legal response. And then that's what they would pin on him.
Yep. And so far,
that's like we both listened to the story on Timcast IRL yesterday of the FBI raiding the home of these two Trump supporters who were at the Capitol, but did not breach. And then the FBI they're like, okay, well, what's the proof? Like, what's the warrants? And they're like, this. And it was this blurry image that could have been anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then the warrant was searching for 3 fairly common Trump merchandise and generic memorabilia.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep, we're just going to raid. We're hoping that you do something more significant. But the couple did not resist, and they got arrested in their front lawn.
Yeah, and the worst part is that they came in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Completely in the dark. They came in, busted in, ran them out of the house, went through the house,
broke into their guest house.
Yep, like Trump said, they're basically thieves, but with badges. They're basically thieves with badges. They're like, if you ever watched the movie V for Vendetta, like the Fingerman, it's like, oh, this badge gives me the ability to do whatever I want. It's like, I can shoot a little girl and show my badge, and it's good.
Yep.
It's like, I don't think that tracks.
But then you face the will of the people.
Yeah, hopefully.
Which is another song by Muse, which we found interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But, I wanted to, so I listened to this on Friday. So this is a clip from the Dan Bongino show. He's interviewing a former FBI agent. So this guy used to not only work with the Bureau, but he had insider knowledge and knew a lot of the people that may have been involved in this entire raid. And he had a couple interesting things to share on that show that a lot of people were talking about over the weekend that we thought would be worth it. So we're going to share one of the things he said here.
Human source, because that's what I said. I said, listen, the Secret Service guys are there 24/7. This was a complete setup. That was a complete ruse. They needed a reliable source, someone who has credibility and who's trustworthy. And listen, Dan, you know it. Who's more trustworthy than a sworn Secret Service agent who can testify or raise his right hand or swear, yes, the safe is this safe, and yes, it would not comport with what would be necessary to maintain or safeguard national security type of documents. And so, boom, there's your affidavit. There's your confidential human source. Now you go before a magistrate and you pass all the litmus tests, all the smell tests, and he signs the warrant.
Brilliant point. So what you're suggesting, just to recap and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Secret Service, their motto is worthy of trust and confidence. No one's going to doubt their bona fides. That they go to them and go, hey, guys, listen, this obviously isn't a satisfactory locking mechanism for these documents, right? Doesn't meet government standards.
It's got to be in a SCIF.
How about what? A SCIF, right? A sensitive, compartmentalized information facility, folks. We're talking federal jargon here,
yes.
But they say, listen, this isn't secure enough. If you Secret Service guys who do this for a living, you know what you're doing. Why don't you come in and then put on an official lock, making this officially secure, and then we get you to testify later that the lock before it wasn't secure. Am I summing that up right?
100%. You did it perfectly.
Oh,
you did it perfectly. But you see, it's such a setup because the argument is both ways, because it's number one, that he wasn't rightfully within his right to keep them or be in possession of them because he's no longer the president of the United States. And then the fallback argument is if he has them, he's not retaining them or safeguarding them properly. I mean, which one do you want to pick, right?
Yeah.
So basically what this guy said, and I don't know if you caught that, is that they completely staged this thing. That
Yep.
This may have been a setup. In other words, they used the Secret Service before to basically come in and be like, well, this is, and they put in their lock. But then by setting that up, they basically had an expert witness that they could use for their affidavit, basically testify under oath that, like, the room wasn't secure before, thus giving them their excuse to go in and do the raid. In other words, they basically used the Secret Service to give them the perfect excuse to go in under the pretense that, like, oh, this is not a very secure site. And then there's another thing we won't get into on this, but he does actually cover it in the video. He basically has some kind of an observation that blew everyone's mind, was that if you're an FBI agent, and he said this is totally out of the norm. FBI agents don't want to spend any more time like doing a search warrant than they have to. They want to get in, get out, find the documents that they want, and then just get out of there. And then he says, like, the best friend of an FBI, like executing a search warrant is the lawyer, because if they're looking for specific things, the lawyer's going to be like, you know what? Tell me what you're looking for. I will show you where it is, and I will give it to you. Just don't tear the house apart. And they prefer it that way, because if they're looking for a specific item, they don't want to have to tear through a whole house. They want to, get that. And the fact that not only did they told the lawyers to stay out of the house while they're searching, and the fact that whenever you're searching blindly with no oversight, that creates a humongous problem for you in any kind of criminal charge, because the implication could easily be made that how do we know you were like dead and didn't plant anything? But the fact that they didn't do any of that is basically proof that they were doing a fishing expedition.
Yep.
And so basically, this is like a guaranteed thing. The fishing expedition is not how you do search warrants. No. I mean, I was pretty blown away when I heard that too.
Oh yeah, it was pretty messed up.
Yeah,
pretty messed up. But
we'll see what happens.
The governments and the Department of Justice of the United States are not the only ones that are corrupt and insane. Unfortunately, Canada's, it's more than just the Justice Department. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
So Canada's digital ID plans uncomfortably close to Chinese social credit. The Constitutional Right Group has blasted the federal government's plan to create a digital ID infrastructure as a threat to the Charter and a step towards implementing a communist China-style social credit system. In the report titled Canada's Road to Beijing, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, great organization, outlines how China's mass surveillance system operates and in what ways a national digital ID system is a step towards authoritarianism. What Canadians need today is not more unmitigated government access to private information, but instead a renewed commitment to charter rights and freedoms. We are on the road to Beijing, and Canadians should be apprehensive, said JCF President John Carpay in a news release on the report. Things are moving fast, and Canadians should be very concerned that a free and democratic society is quickly headed towards a society where citizens can be cancelled by the government with the flick of a switch. It cited the Trudeau government's willingness to freeze the assets and shut down the Big Against the Freedom Convoy supporters in February. It used the briefly invoked powers of the Emergencies Act to identify its political enemies and selectively freeze their bank accounts, the report explains.
Yeah, it goes on, but basically, one of the things that people have noticed is that Trudeau government is not acting like a government that's actually serving its people. Like they have a plan, and they're pushing it forward. Doesn't matter what the science says. Doesn't matter how many people. They basically have a plan, and they are sticking to it. They don't give a rat's, like they don't give a crap what the Canadian public thinks about their plans. It's incredible. We have like a government right now that is basically like trying to completely switch over our society to Chinese style dictatorship. I mean, we talked about Twitter. Remember Stephen, how we talked about Twitter and how Twitter is instituting these new rules on speech and all that kind of stuff. And Canada's doing the same thing, aren't they? Yeah. What's Canada's thing? Like, how are they doing it?
Oh, for our social credit?
Well, we have like a whole different approach of how we're going to set online. That is worse than Twitter.
Oh yeah, because Canada has we have digital misinformation laws, and they will govern which can and cannot be posted.
Yeah, they're going to use the CRTC.
Yep.
They're going to weaponize the CRTC to go after your comments online. And I don't know. It's looking bad in Canada. Canada's not looking good, bro.
Yep. Canada is becoming a crap hole.
Yeah, and everyone should just just be aware. Like it feels right now like we're in a bit of a, but things are going to get really bad coming because we're gonna get those food shortages that we keep hearing about. We're going to get all sorts of chaos, and eventually our government's going to introduce digital currency, digital ID, and that way, if you don't go along with their thing, they will pretty much take away everything you have and you own.
Yeah.
And the charter's going to be, it's not going to be worth the paper it's written on.
Nope. No. And another organization that doesn't care whether the charter's not worth the paper it's written on would be the World Economic Forum, which is contemplating using drones to vaccinate rural populations.
Remember the Babylon Bee?
Yeah, currently running trials using drones to deliver vaccines to rural populations in India. So there is an urgency for the public and private sectors to collaborate on drone applications to improve healthcare equity in rural areas. An article from the WF reads, the World Economic Forum's Medicine from the Sky initiative is accelerating the transformation from inefficient health supply chains to digital, resilient infrastructure that reduces wastage and improves health outcomes. According to the forum, the organization has made over 300 vaccine delivery trials and now plans to expand the project's scope. Besides getting more vaccines into the arms of Indians, the forum also wants to start using drones to deliver more efficacious supplies, such as blood and snake antivenom, which are commonly needed in rural areas. Data collection is also a major part of the initiative, particularly geospatial data on India's rural terrain.
Yeah, this basically sounds like supervillain like level stuff.
Yes. Well, like the idea of getting vaccines and snake venom and supplies is not bad.
Yeah.
But if you have drones that are delivering it, it's not going to be that long. Because, like, the article, of course, saying it's using drones to vaccinate rural populations, which is one thing compared to using drones to deliver medical supplies and vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
So, a little bit misleading with the title. But it would not be very long, considering their plans for the world, it would not be very long before you would have drones using some sort of scanner and then a projectile vaccine that you could fire off.
Yeah, they definitely. I recommend go to the Babylon Bee, where they have like drone like bees or something like that, and they just basically walk around and sting you with like vaccine.
Yeah.
Or even that Project Veritas guy. Remember that, Stephen? He basically said like, we should get blow darts, or simply vaccinate those darn Trump reporters or something.
Yeah, those darn Trump reporters.
Yeah,
just shoot them.
Yeah, but here's the problem: like, they want to get the vaccine to every person on Earth, which should really raise a lot of red flags. But it's like the vaccine itself has some serious problems, and they're just getting worse. That the evidence just keeps piling up, including this study that came out.
Yes,
I think Steve's going to read through it.
So, study shows higher rate of reinfection for vaccinated persons. This was fairly obvious for a while, considering that even just recently, the 4th dosed head of Pfizer now has COVID. So, a new study indicates the rate of reinfection of COVID is higher for those who are considered fully vaccinated. So, surprisingly, 2 or more doses of the vaccine were associated with a slightly higher probability of reinfection compared to with 1 dose or less. In fact, they found the highest rate of reinfection was for 18 to 29-year-olds. who received 2 or more vaccines. However, researchers advised the variance between the groups to be interpreted with caution due to the limitations of the study. Published research now showing the greater number of COVID jabs equals greater chance of COVID infection. Could this possibly be why the vaccine status of newly infected Canadians is no longer made public by some governments and health units?
I wonder.
Yeah.
I heard that. Ontario stopped doing that.
Stopped. As per the study, researchers covered over 12 months of data between 2021 and 2022 and more than 11,000 people who had COVID. Ultimately, they found that reinfection was more common than previously thought. Reinfection was observed in 1,327 persons during the Omicron period. Of those who had received 1 dose or less of the vaccine, 11.7% were reinfected, compared with 10.9% of those who had received 2 or more doses. The reinfection rate was highest, 15.1%, amongst those 18 to 29 years. Fewer reinfections occurred amongst older individuals. The probability of reinfection increased from time from the initial infection. It was higher amongst persons who had received 2 or more doses compared with 1 dose or less of the vaccine. Defining reinfection as 30 more days or 90 or more days did not quantitatively change the results.
I mean, yeah, the amount of the studies coming out of these are just brutal. I remember so I was listening to there's a video on it was actually Odyssey, and it was Steve Kirsch. Now, if anybody doesn't know who Steve Kirsch is I forget his qualifications, but he knows
Kirsch,
more about
not Hirsch. Kirsch.
Kirsch with K, sorry. So Steve Kirsch. So Steve Kirsch has been on the forefront of informing and helping people understand the COVID pandemic, all the information, including he's been on the forefront of basically informing people about the vaccines. And he went on Odyssey, and among the many things that he said, which were just mind-blowing, he talked about a party a wedding party, and that a friend of his had, and that he attended. And then 100 people were unvaccinated, and about 100 people were vaccinated in certain degrees. And I think he said that the results were I forget the numbers, but it was 20-something people had died, and another several dozen got extremely ill that had been vaccinated. And of all the vaccinated, the unvaccinated, nobody had any serious adverse events from COVID. And it was he's that is statistically impossible. The fact that all of the negative outcomes happened almost exclusively in the vaccinated crowd was just mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of you know what? I wonder what he's published recently, as far as because he has a Substack, and I recommend go check out his Substack. It's pretty brilliant. But here's what he published recently, less than a month ago. 100 indicator, he's a list of 100 indicators that the safe and effective narrative is falling apart, and is a devastating list. So we're not going to go through all of them, but Stephen, go through it and see anything that kind of jumps out at you.
Okay, well, so 1 in every 246 vaccinated people has died within 60 days of the vaccination in England, according to the UK government.
That is brutal.
So Wayne Root basically did the post-marketing randomized clinical trial the CDC never did. Only 200 people were enrolled in his trial, which lasted 8 months. The results were stunning: 26 injuries and 7 deaths, but only the vaccinated, the unvaxxed, had no issues.
Yeah, go to number 5. This one I found really crazy.
Vaccine deaths outnumber COVID deaths in the United States household. 2 new polls confirm.
Mm-hmm.
Germany's largest health insurer reveals 1 in 25 clients underwent medical treatment for 2021 for COVID vaccine side effects, but only 78% are vaccinated, so that is a 5% injury rate for people who are vaccinated. That's insane for a vaccine.
Check out number 9.
NIH study finds 40.2% of women experience menstrual changes post-vaccine. That's actually 42%, not 40.2. So it's supposed to be 42%.
Depends on the,
it says
40.2.
Well, I had heard 42. I think it was somebody reading it wrong.
Mm-hmm. And it goes here, number 13. This one, I thought this was.
Vaccine deaths are now simply too massive to keep hiding. Teens never die in their sleep. How can this happen 2 days after getting the vaccine? Latest UK's numbers show unvaccinated have lower mortality for pretty much all age groups. Turbo cancer is being reported. Interesting.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Because one of the side effects of the vaccine is it kills your killer T cells, the ones responsible for keeping your cancers at bay, which means that a lot of people are getting aggressive cancers that just come out of nowhere and kind of proliferate like crazy. That's basically what he means by turbo cancer. It's a pretty insane thing, and he goes into so many crazy more details.
Yeah,
about all of the things. Here, go down to point 14, which will be like way down a little bit, and the point right before it. So it's the point 21 of his list of things. So keep going down. Keep going down. 20.21, right there.
Or subheading 21. Fully vaxxed young adults are 92% more likely to die than unvaxxed young adults.
That I found insane. So, again, there's a very long list. Take some time in the next couple of days, and I'm going to read through this. But this literally seems like one of the most comprehensive lists that you should send to everyone you know and get them to read through it. Because one of the problems with all of these vaccine injuries and all that kind of stuff that are happening is that most people don't have the resources to research and find all this stuff, but he has gone through and found a crap ton of things. Did you find something?
Well, this 15 heading 15. Casket makers for child caskets see a 40% rise in demand.
Right after the vaccine started.
Yeah, unprecedented orders of child-sized coffins since December 2021.
Yeah. See, this is the kind of thing that should make you so angry. The amount of things that they're hiding and putting in, it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of these things cannot be explained by any other.
Okay, so this one business, we received 2 bulk orders for sub 5-foot units, which is child size, in less than 6 months. Never in 30 years of business have we ever stored child size coffins in bulk.
Mm-hmm. I think point 18. You can go to point 18.
Vaccine injuries of toddlers who are having seizures cannot be explained. It is now a regular occurrence for 2 and 3-year-olds to have seizures. Only in vaccinated kids, and most often between 2 and 5 days of vaccination. They're not allowed to report these events. They're not allowed to share on social media or talk to the press, so each doctor thinks it's simply a one-off event that is only happening to them. If doctors would be allowed to speak publicly, they would realize the massive pattern. That's why hospitals muzzle the doctors, so nobody finds out. We have multiple reports of these from nurses, directly from nurses who are scared. Their social media accounts are being monitored. Their parents are told that it's just bad luck, and the parents believe what they are told, so the parents don't speak about it either.
Mm-hmm. I thought this was interesting. The very next point, point number 20, actually not 19, 20. Right there. Apparently a lot of concerts are being canceled, major concerts, and they're not giving the reason. So sub point 1. Think about all the rock concerts that have been terminated or canceled due to medical reasons. Justin Bieber, Santana, Bret Michaels. And they never give you the vaccine as a cause. But I don't know. Stephen, did you see that Justin Bieber got
Bell's palsy?
Bell's palsy. And nobody was allowed to talk about it. Nobody was allowed to mention it. But it was a big deal when it first came out. The problem is, it's out there. The information's out there. People just see bits of it. It's like a puzzle. All the pieces are there. They don't seem to be coming together unless you put all the pieces together in a picture. When you see the whole picture, you see a very scary picture of the scale of what is going on. I run into this all the time. but I see all these posts that people put on Facebook, and they're like, "Oh, 5-year-old girl, seven died suddenly in her sleep," and people were like, "Oh, this is so sad," and I'm like, "Why did she die?"
It's sad, but why?
Why did she die? And so like, "Oh, a girl had what we call a seizure, or a stroke." 17-year-old girl dies of a stroke. I'm like, how does a 17-year-old kid have a stroke? Especially a healthy kid. Like all these things, you're not supposed to question. You're not supposed to ask why. A couple weeks ago, you and I did that segment with what was it, 6 doctors in Toronto?
Six. Well, no, 5 in Toronto and then 1 in Saskatchewan. That all died within 2 weeks of getting their 3rd booster.
Yep.
2nd booster, so that'd be 4 shot.
Well, the first booster, I think it was, wasn't it? Because they got 2 shots.
It'd be a 2nd booster. It was 2nd booster.
Second booster, okay.
Because in early July was when the 2nd booster was made available in Ontario.
So I recommend that everyone, if you can, read through this. If you want, send it to your friends. Because this is Steve Hirsch is one of the best in the industry.
Kirsch.
Kirsch, sorry. Keep thinking Hirsch.
Kirsch.
Steve Kirsch. Thank you, Stephen.
He's
one of the best in the industry. And he basically has done all of the legwork for you. All you have to do is just go through it, read the stuff, gives you all the sources. This is how you do your own research.
Yeah. You can be super lazy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, yeah, great newsletter. Recommend that you subscribe to it, but also recommend that you read this article. This is an amazing article.
Okay. So, that's where we're going to end for today's show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're watching on our video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube, then follow, subscribe, comment. Tell us how we're doing. Had some interesting comments in the past few days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One was actually related directly to my yawning. And I'm like...
Oh, because you yawn too much?
That's the weird part. Is, those who know me in everyday life, I do not yawn at all.
Yeah. But you
and then during the show, I just can't stop. I know that I yawn, and I'm like, why am I yawning so much on the show? And then in everyday, I was actively keeping a mental thought about it today, and I'm like, I haven't yawned once today. And then I get into the show, and it's like,
Yep, I've noticed it a few times today. I was like,
even when we were doing prep for the show, didn't yawn during the prep for the show, but as soon as the show starts, it's yawn city. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
You've been cursed, man.
I don't even know. It's so weird.
I think one of those pro boardies probably curse you. They're probably they curse you. Be like, may he yawn 1,000 yawns.
May he yawn. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to look into it. So we'll see. If you're following us on our text platforms, such as Facebook, Gitter, Twitter, and Parler, then you know what to do on those platforms. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because if you don't know how to use them, then get off those platforms. Come on, man. Come on, guys. Get with it.
Get on there. Get on the program.
Get on it and give us a review, because we know you love us.
And I'm gonna steal this from Brett Cooper, who I actually really liked the comment section. Be like, whoa. I can't believe you're just gonna leave this episode and not leave a like. That's honestly rude. Yeah. I actually love how he does that. I was like, yeah, that's actually really good. I'm like, I mean, if you watch the whole show, I'm like the least you could do is leave a like and show that you actually enjoyed it. So I'm like,
yes, show us how much you love us.
Yes, show it love,
but not physically, because that'd be weird.
Well, I mean, I'm okay. Steven's got a wife, but I'm like, hey, you can show me all the love. It's all good.
YOLO.
Send a picture.
No homo.
Send a picture first. Send a picture.
All right. So, here at the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd? We will see you on Thursday for our regularly scheduled live stream at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. Till then, have a great night. And, as always, God bless.
Good night, everybody.